Hello. I need to get ready.
What is that?
Pizza?
Yes, I can see that, but is that a real pizza?
Well, they told me we have a professional shoot, so I got my lunch because I do have a workout done. So I got my proteins, my carbs, my fat.
You got microbes, not my carbs, bro. I can see mold in there, buddy.
No, actually, it's actually good. It's good for my immune system.
Disgusting.
It's fine. I do have a competition next month, so I need to cut weight. So food poisoning is actually good.
Working out.
It's actually good for this. So I'm fine with it. And
just keep that thing away from me, man. Okay.
So, and not mainly I'm here to introduce the episode. That's it. I'm paid for this.
All right.
So I need to introduce because we're here to shoot the first episode of Grip Shots. Let's talk about today's topic, that is the high bar squat. We're going to talk about the other squats later on other episodes, but first let's talk about the high bar squat. But before that, let's introduce a bit the squat and talk about the history of squat.
That's pretty easy when it comes to the history of the squat. Try to imagine a primitive caveman going about his day and suddenly gets the urge to take a shit. What is that guy going to do? He's just going to squat down somewhere, probably dig a hole in the ground and take a shit, right? So somewhere along that line between inventing toilet seats and car seats and chairs and beds that are yay high, we lost this fundamental ability to assume that position. And we literally cannot squat down anymore. So I guess it's ironic that people will go to gyms and pay private trainers to help them recover that position or kind of get familiar with that position again. So I guess it's very, very fundamentally inherent in our system to squat, but we just forgot how to. It's pretty much prevalent in any sport that you could think of, a squat position in some shape or form. And the high bar is one of them.
True. So we're gonna actually go now into more details about the high bar squat and help you to actually do this exercise and find your perfect position and good technique. So here we are now talking about the high bar squat. So let's start with the exercise itself and the technique and positioning.
Okay, so there are lots of kinds of or types of squat or squat positions in terms of the stance itself, in terms of bar placement. So the high bar squat is basically the highest point that you can place the bar behind your head. Very similar to a front squat, except the bar is actually on the back, not on the front of your shoulders. The opposite to a high bar would obviously be the low bar, and somewhere in between a very high bar and a very low bar position, there are different positions as well, depending on your preference. So the high bar is basically more oriented towards putting stress on the quads themselves, on the front part of the thigh, the outer part of the thigh. Notably the vastus medialis and the vastus lateralis. Less emphasis on the hamstrings because you're basically in a very erect position. The placement of the bar allows you to stay completely upright. And also allows you to grab the bar a lot tighter, closer in. People with broad shoulders and even mobility issues with the shoulders still find it relatively easy to grab the bar close to the head, close to the shoulders themselves. So that's basically, that kind of sums up what a high bar is and what it looks like.
Yeah, so let's start with the grip. So mainly if you're going into the bar, First of all, you start with very low weight, but it's your first time, so to get used to your positioning, to the way you need to grab the bar. So let's say I'm in front of the bar. So how should I actually take the distance? I should take it depending on my shoulder distance.
I wouldn't really suggest that the first thing you would do is grab the bar. I would suggest that you actually go under the bar.
Okay.
So the first thing for a beginner is get under the bar first, and then try to grab the bar and see where your arms would naturally grab the bar.
Okay.
Try to unrack the bar from there, take a step or a couple of steps back, and see how you feel squatting with a straight back or a neutral spine.
Okay.
So from there onwards, session after session, you can try to experiment with different positionings and different grips of the bar. Some people like to hold the bar with the thumb wrapped around the bar. Other people prefer to keep the thumb in sort of a monkey grip next to the index finger. Some people would have a very loose grip, which could put a lot of stress on the wrists. They would wrap their wrists with wraps and grab the bar with the tips of their fingers. So it's really it really depends on the person himself or herself and on how long they've been experimenting to find that ideal position.
Okay, so now that you actually know how to unrack the bar and position yourself, you're unracking the bar, how should you squat?
Right.
Before that, actually, how much weight should you start with?
Excellent question.
Because sometimes you know that an empty bar is actually dangerous. You can't find your position because there's no actual weight, and it's so lightweight sometimes, depending on your body weight, as you said, that actually your body, as you said in the history of squat, we don't know how to squat anymore. So not having weight on your back sometimes can actually not help you find your perfect positioning.
Just to a certain extent, I would definitely prefer that we start with no weight at all.
Okay.
To fully understand what's happening.
Without the bar.
With no bar,
Okay.
Just learn how to squat.
Okay.
Learn how to actually go that low without your heels elevating off the floor, without perhaps feeling, you might feel pain squatting in a certain position. Maybe your legs are too wide open, maybe they're too narrow. Maybe there's a lot of lumbar flexion happening because you're going too low, lower than necessary. And I'm not talking about a competition depth in powerlifting. I'm just talking about the ideal squat that allows you to go down and up without causing knee pain, hip pain, or lower back pain. So once that is completed, once you've tried to squat pain-free for a while, start with something even lighter than a 20-kilo Olympic bar. Try getting a dowel, try getting a broomstick, and just learn how to situate that bar on, or that stick, whatever you want to call it, on your back with the proper form that you're looking for, and then squat from there. And see if you can preserve the mechanics of that squat and the integrity of your form for several reps in a row before moving on to a bar. And afterwards, yes, you're actually right. In certain situations, at least for me, I can't really do a front squat with an empty bar or with even maybe 10 or 20 kilos on the bar. It's very difficult for me.
Yeah.
I need to feel some weight.
Yeah.
Same thing with other lifts, such as a deadlift, for example. You need some kind of weight to help you preserve the proper form.
Sure. Before we start showing you how you should actually squat and how you should actually get out of the hole, let's talk a bit about the type of athletes that actually use the high bar squat. So you do have athletes that actually use it as a main lift, some as accessories, some are just for muscle building. So
true. Notably, Olympic lifters are the most known to using the high bar squat. It's a great accessory for their main lifts, the clean and jerk, the snatch, whatever. Bodybuilders, although you might not really consider them as athletes, just for the lack of a better term, but they use the high bar.
They're like artists.
Performance artists, maybe, yes, that's the part that they see on stage. But when they're training, it's I guess it's to some extent pure athleticism, but that's not really what the crowd see at the end. Sure. But anyway, going off on a tangent here, the high bar is more efficient for bodybuilders to develop quad size because it really isolates that muscle a lot more. Even the machines that bodybuilders would use to train their legs are more oriented towards isolation, pure isolation. So it's kind of I wouldn't be talking about the high bar now. I'd be talking about why they won't use the low bar, because the low bar allows them to use a lot of other muscles and divide that energy.
That's why powerlifters use it, because you can actually lift more weight.
Exactly. It's recruiting as many muscle groups as possible to lift as heavy a weight as possible.
However, they do use the high bar as accessories.
They do, definitely.
It's actually important.
Exactly. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you have one muscle group that's failing in the middle of the lift because you fail to address that muscle during training, then you have a problem.
And you do have CrossFitters knowing that they have some Olympic lifting in their workout, so they actually also use the high bar as an accessory. During their training, I see a lot of CrossFitters actually using the high bar.
If their training is specific.
So they don't go heavy. So that, for example, they don't go for testing a PR like power lifter.
Right. It's more towards endurance. Absolutely. Their training is quite specific and true to high bar squats. So when in competition, if they're going to compete with a high bar, then obviously they're going to train with a high bar. It won't make any sense to train otherwise. So yes, I guess when it comes to the purpose of the high bar, it is to strengthen the quads. In Olympic lifting, for example, it's very comfortable for the lifter to jerk or push press the bar from a high bar position than a low bar position. It's actually it's useless to put the bar in a low bar position, and it's actually dangerous for the pecs.
Also, in those type of competitions, either powerlifting or Olympic, you should lift smart. That's it. So maybe you have to find your lowest range of motion, the most efficient lift, your most efficient positioning, all this. So it's actually
it all goes under the umbrella term of specificity, to be specific and true to what your goal is. Keep your eyes on the prize. If your objective is to just lift a weight from point A to point B as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible, then your training has to be oriented towards that goal.
So that's it now. We're going to go now into actually squatting and showing you how to get out of the ball. Now, we're going to talk about squatting. So let's start with it.
All right, so let's say you walked up to your bar on the rack, you grabbed it anywhere, went underneath the bar, felt your bar on your body, felt it supported, you're ready to unrack it. Find a position for your arms that feels tight enough for you. I'm not going to get into details here, maybe not too narrow, not too wide. Unrack the bar and then take a couple of steps back. Try to find a position that was familiar for you when you were squatting without any weight. So try to get to that same position again. And the descend itself is a movement of the hips and the knees at the same time. So try to imagine that you're sitting on a chair. There's an imaginary chair behind you. Your hips go back, your knees open up, your knees bend. So you start to go down in that descend, go down as slow as possible. You don't want to go too fast and not know what happened on the way down and possibly injure yourself. So try to stay aware to everything that's happening. As you go down, try to feel what muscles and what joints are moving. Go down, so you have your hips moving backwards, your knees bending, and obviously your ankles begin to bend a little bit to some extent. Most important thing is don't feel your heels lifting off the floor, elevating off the floor. Your feet should be 100% flat on the floor from toe to heel. And it's only the ankle that moves, which is known as dorsiflexion or dorsiflexion, depending on how you pronounce it. So go down, sit down. How low should you go? It's going to be probably hard for someone to envision this, but to parallel depth, to a depth that your thighs would reach, which is parallel to the floor. This is where I would recommend you use a mirror for someone who's a beginner. You can go ahead and have your squat in front of you.
And later on, your body will start getting used to your position and how you
muscle
squat.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with using a mirror at first, or at least have someone next to you to tell you you're going too low or too high. So why I wouldn't recommend that you go beyond parallel depth, I guess it's a depth that you would not be able to control, because you're going down and you're letting the weight push you down. So the weight could possibly push you down to a depth that is not natural for you to reach, stretching muscles and ligaments and tissue that is not supposed to stretch that much. So try to reach a depth that you're still in control of, where your muscles are still tight, your joints are still in control, and push yourself out of there from there. So how do you push yourself out of there? The ascent itself. It's basically quad activation. The first thing that should be activated is your quads. Obviously, your toes are going to be pushing into the floor. Your foot is going to be pushing entirely into the floor. Obviously your calf muscles would be activated at this point. So just to stabilize, so that you don't topple forward or fall backward or lean to either side, and start pushing yourself upwards. Feel the quads firing up. Halfway into your squat, you might want to try to push your hips inward, forward, and that is that's going to happen by the glutes. The glutes are going to actually contract to push your hip forward and complete the ascent.
After finding your perfect positioning and technique and form, and you're ready to actually grab a proper bar and squat, how can you actually test yourself and know what is your rep max if you're a first time squatter?
Okay, interesting question. Most people would want to, ego would want to take over and just lift as heavy as possible. Eventually, for someone who's pursuing a powerlifting career, that is their ultimate goal. But if you're trying to just develop stronger legs, maybe you are more into aesthetics, then it has very little to do with how heavy you can lift. You'd actually would rather, steer away from lifting too heavy too often. But if you wanted to test how heavy you can lift, it's a very slow and gradual process. It's not something that you can jump into overnight. So the first thing that you have to do is, whether or not you've been doing some kind of leg workout before, maybe you're someone who does leg extensions or leg curls or leg presses, but you've never done a squat before, still you need to start as light as possible. I would not use body weight as a reference. I would not say, so for example, you weigh, say 100 pounds, you should lift 100 pounds or 2 times or 3 times your body weight. No. That's very relative. Someone might be overweight, someone might be
young, not experienced.
Exactly, absolutely. So start with as light as possible, like we said, an empty bar. Add something to it, something very, not very substantial, maybe 5 pounds on each side, 10 pounds. And as long as you're lifting that weight very comfortably for 10 or 15 repetitions, then you're fine. You can add weight. If you get to a point where you feel like you're no longer able to sustain 10 repetitions, then it's probably getting too heavy. Avoid that weight.
Yeah.
Try to go to a fraction less than that weight and maintain the 10 rep range. Your best reference is obviously, as much as we would film the perfect, or try to film for you the perfect squat, it doesn't mean that if you see it, you'll be able to apply it. You will need someone there with you to tell you, wait, I think you're doing this wrong, or this is dangerous, or whatever. So you would definitely need the advice and help of an experienced coach or lifter, someone who's there to correct your form. Maybe your form is perfect on the first rep, second, third, fourth. By the fifth rep, you're still lifting comfortably, but there's something wrong with your form that could possibly damage a joint somewhere or a muscle. So it's advised that you keep someone there looking, paying attention from rep 1 to rep 10 or rep 15, and that would really help you.
And sometimes that's why it's actually good if you film this yourself, so you can actually
Filming
check your
yourself
position.
definitely is absolutely
if you're
perfect.
working out alone.
But by the time you're done with the lift, if you've already injured yourself, the film won't really help.
True.
So you definitely need someone around to keep an eye on you, and just keep an eye on the basics that you might possibly not notice, like your heels are lifting off the floor. I cannot emphasize this enough. Apply pressure with the heels always. I say that because when I say apply pressure with the heels, it's actually going to help you keep your foot flat on the floor. You're not actually going to end up with your heel pushing and the rest of your foot is elevated. No, you might think that, but when I keep giving you that verbal cue, push with the heel, push with the heel, keep applying pressure with the heel, you'd actually be maintaining your foot flat on the floor. Because what your body would most probably have a tendency to do is elevate the heel. So I'm trying to reverse psychology my way into helping you push more with the heel in order to push with the whole foot flat on the floor.
Also, you said a big part of the lift as a squat or later on the bench as deadlift when we're gonna talk about it. Before you even think about how to use your muscles, you actually think about the lift in your head. So actually, you should think hips, knees, foot,
Right.
push the floor. So all this actually helps you
This is,
in lifting.
the key word here is proprioception. It's
Yeah.
your ability to be aware of what is happening
True. True.
to your faculties.
True.
You should know that as I'm going down, my hands are grabbing the bar. You should be aware of that. As I'm going down, my hips are going backwards, my knees are bending, my feet are completely flat on the floor, my knees are pushing outwards or inwards. So yes, you should be aware of what is happening. If you lose sight of what's happening at any point in the lift, whether while going down or up, you are in serious jeopardy, possibly going to injure yourself.
Yeah.
Light or heavyweight, all the same.
That's right. That's it for the high bar. If you have any suggestions, comment. Let us know if you're having any trouble in the high bar squat. If you need any video to explain more improvement, we'll do it. But let us know what you want exactly, so we can go into more detail. Next episode will be about the low bar squat. We're gonna go into details also. And a small reminder: if you're gonna use the bar pad when you're first gonna squat, don't let them do it. It's okay. It's their first time.
I use a bar pad.
You do?
I have a clean bar. Yeah.
I think I should.
Your mummified pizza.
You have your pink bar
Mummified
pad.
pizza. You have your microbes.
No, man. It's actually green.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.